The invitation said 11:30. I arrived at 11:20, as I always do, early enough to settle, never early enough to intrude. The hostess glanced up, offered a polite smile, and asked if I had a reservation. I told her I was with the Hollies party. Her brows lifted slightly as she scanned the screen. That's when I heard it. Serena's voice sharp enough to slice through the low hum of brunch chatter. Call the manager. This old woman doesn't belong here? People turned. Forks paused midair. I didn't move. Serena stood near a long table lined with champagne glasses and gift bags. She was wearing a cream jumpsuit, large sunglasses still perched on her head like a crown. She looked directly at me, lips curled, then glanced toward the hostess. She's not supposed to be here. This is a private event. Behind her, my son Jeremy shifted. He didn't speak, didn't correct her. He just looked away. The manager appeared within seconds. Familiar face. Same trimmed beard, same navy apron. He'd been there the last time I came in quiet, competent, quick to smile. But today, his face turned unreadable as he approached. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, addressing me first. "May I assist you?" Serena blinked. "Excuse me." She just wandered in here. "We have a reservation Hollis for 15. "I'm aware," the manager said calmly. Then he turned back to me. "Would you like to be seated now, or would you prefer to handle this privately?" Serena's jaw fell slightly. Jeremy stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I looked at the table balloons presents Eli sitting quietly between two cousins, and then back at the manager. "Corner booth, please," I said softly. "Same as last time." Of course he nodded. "Follow me." I walked past Serena without a glance, my shoes steady on the polished floor. The invitation was still folded in my coat pocket, right beside the envelope I hadn't planned to use today, but might. The booth was waiting, linen-pressed water already poured. I slid in, adjusted the napkin, and waited. Not for food. Not for them. Just for the right moment. I sat with my hands folded while the waiter filled my glass. The linen felt stiff beneath my fingertips, starched and crisp like the old days. No one came over. No one acknowledged me. That was fine. I wasn't here to be seen. From my booth, I could see the entire party. Serena was in full performance mode, laughing too loudly, tossing her hair like she was being filmed. Jeremy nodded along, quiet, detached. He looked tired. Or maybe just elsewhere. Eli sat at the end of the table, swinging his feet under the chair. His plate had 2 strawberries and a half-cut pancake. He picked at the edges, while the adults carried on about schools and summer camps and renovations they hadn't paid for themselves. A woman across from Serena leaned in and whispered something. Serena laughed and gestured in my direction. I didn't need to hear it to know what was said. I took a sip of water. The server returned and placed a plate in front of me, unprompted. A simple omelet, just the way I used to order it. I nodded in thanks. He smiled like he knew. Time passed. Plates changed. Mimosas refilled. The energy at the table shifted when Serena stood and excused herself to the restroom, adjusting her blouse as she walked. I waited a few seconds, then slipped out of the booth. The hallway was narrow, clean, lined with local art. I moved slowly, not to be seen, but not to appear sneaky either. The restroom door was cracked open, and I heard Serena's voice before I reached it. She shows up like she owns the place. You should have seen the look on her face. Eli doesn't even like her. He barely talks when she's around. Then a pause. "I told you once we get her in that place upstate, and Jeremy signs the release, the bank access opens up. She can keep her little shoebox apartment. We'll do the rest." I didn't flinch. I turned around, walked back down the hall, and sat at my table again before the check arrived. I didn't need confrontation. I needed a pen. 2 months ago, I sat at a long table surrounded by colleagues I'd worked with for 3 decades. There was no band, no speeches, just laughter over pasta and red wine, and a chocolate cake with my name spelled right for once. It was quiet, warm, thoughtful. Serena said she had a scheduling conflict. Jeremy never called. I had reserved the private room myself. Familiar walls, familiar staff. The head waiter Miguel, now the floor manager, had leaned in with a grin as I signed the check. "You've been coming here longer than I've been working," he said. "Feels like you should own the place." I just smiled, because I did once. Just not how he meant. Decades ago, before the exposed brick and bistro lights, there was a storefront on Burnside with mismatched chairs and a paper menu taped to the window. My husband Royce ran the kitchen. I ran the books, the payroll, the schedules. I sourced the linens, ordered the wine, trained the staff when we had staff. He got the press. I didn't mind. When he died, the board offered to buy me out. I declined. I knew the business better than anyone, they just didn't know I still wanted it. So I let them restructure and took my share through a blind trust. On paper, the name changed. In practice, I never really left. Only one partner knew Elliot Royce's old sous chef turned CEO. He handled the legal side. I stayed out of the way. I'd kept my distance all these years. Let the world think I'd moved on to consulting, and I had. But every quarterly report landed in my mailbox. Every board vote with my stake was quietly cast. They thought I had nothing now, that I lived in a modest apartment because I had to, that my retirement dinner was a farewell. It wasn't. It was the last time I'd spend money in this place under someone else's name, and now, with Serena's voice still echoing in my head, I knew exactly where to send the next envelope. I stirred the cold coffee in front of me, though I'd long stopped drinking it. The sound of Serena's voice still lingered in my head, bright and cruel, like a song I couldn't turn off. "Once we get her in that care home, Jeremy can unlock her accounts." She said it like she was talking about a lockbox, not a person. Her friend's laugh followed. "Just let her keep that sad little apartment. She's clinging to her past anyway." I had walked back to my table before either of them noticed. The omelet had gone lukewarm, but I ate it anyway. Every bite gave me a reason not to stand up and react. I've learned that anger spent too soon is anger wasted. Some things grow stronger in silence. When I looked up, the manager was standing a few tables away, waiting. I gave a small nod, and he came over. "Everything all right, Miss Vane?" His tone was professional, but his eyes searched mine. "I didn't make this reservation," I said, quietly. "Yet it's under my name, isn't it?" He hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. The Hollis brunch was booked through a corporate account tied to the Vane Group. It must have been a system error." "It's not an error," I interrupted. "It's just ironic." He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. The Vane Group was the holding company that owned the restaurant chain, a name I hadn't used publicly in years. When he walked away, I folded the napkin neatly beside my plate and pulled my phone from my purse. My hand shook once, then steadied. I called Angela. "Corliss," she said, answering on the first ring. "You only call when something's gone wrong." "Not wrong," I told her. "Just overdue. I want to meet tomorrow morning. We need to make some adjustments." "Adjustments," she repeated. "To what exactly?" "To everything." I hung up before she could ask more, finished my meal in silence, and waited for the check to arrive. Angela's office smelled faintly of paper and coffee, the kind of place where secrets go to become signatures. She was already standing when I walked in, files spread across her desk like an unspoken question. "You didn't waste time," she said, motioning for me to sit. "Neither did they," I replied. We worked in quiet rhythm as we always had. I explained what I wanted, what needed to change, and she listened without interrupting. Every word I said felt heavier than the last. "Jeremy and Serena," I began, "are to be removed from any claim beyond the apartment on Harper Street. The rest will go into separate trusts. Angela adjusted her glasses. Defined beneficiaries. Half to long-term staff. The rest divided 40% to the women's shelter downtown and the remainder to Eli. But his trust stays sealed until he's 25. It can't be touched by his parents. Her pen paused mid-note. That's extensive. It's overdue, I said softly. She leaned back, studying me for a long moment. You understand what this triggers, Corliss. Once the clause activates, there's no going back. The estate moves into irrevocable trust. They can't contest. I nodded. It's time. Angela opened a drawer, pulled out the thick folder marked Vane Group Holdings. She flipped to the section with my late husband's signature and slid the new papers across the desk. I signed my name beside his, steady and unshaking. For 30 years, that signature meant partnership protection, a life built quietly behind another man's name. Now it meant freedom. Angela sealed the last envelope. Do you want them notified? Not yet, I said. They'll find out soon enough. She gave a small nod, understanding the rest without needing words. When I stepped outside, the air felt colder, clearer. I stopped at a cafe across the street, ordered black tea, and pulled out my notebook. There were other accounts to review, other steps to plan. I opened the first page, wrote 2 words, and underlined them twice. Sunday brunch. They arrived in pairs, handshakes, laughter, polished shoes clicking across the floor. The table was set for 10 this time. Linen napkins, tasting menus, wine pairings pre-selected. Serena had gone all in. She wore red, louder than usual, fitted sharp at the waist, and greeted each guest like she was hosting at her own estate. From my booth near the front window, I watched her float from seat to seat, tossing out phrases like our expansion next quarter and family legacy. She used the word we, as if she'd ever lifted anything heavier than a wine glass in this place. A young man with a portfolio leaned forward and asked, "So your family owns this whole block?" Serena laughed, eyes sparkling. You could say that. My husband's mother had some minor shares, but the real work started with us. I stirred honey into my tea. Minor shares. Jeremy walked in. 20 minutes late. No tie, no apologies. He looked around, spotted me, and gave a small nod, like I was a neighbor he occasionally saw at the mailbox. He took the empty seat beside Serena without a word in my direction. Serena pressed her hand to his arm and whispered something I couldn't hear. He didn't smile. He looked tired again. Or maybe just quietly worn out by pretending. The waiter came by my table with a refill. Would you like anything from the kitchen, Ms. Vane? I shook my head. Just tea and the guest list. He slid a folded sheet from his apron pocket. Names, affiliations, investors, 2 bloggers, 1 junior partner from a group that once turned down Royce's proposal 15 years ago. Serena stood with her glass raised. To new chapters, she said. To expanding our family's story, and to those who made it possible. The table clinked their glasses together. I folded the paper and slid it back into my bag. I didn't need to hear the rest. The only expansion happening that day was the one I'd already set in motion. The sound of clinking spoons and soft laughter filled the room as dessert plates were set down, white chocolate tarts, garnished just the way Royce liked them. Serena was mid-sentence, gesturing with a fork when the manager approached the head of the table. He leaned down slightly, professional, but firm. Excuse me, the owner would like a moment. It took a second for the words to register. Then eyes turned one by one toward me. Serena blinked, confused. Jeremy looked up, mouth half open. The guest beside him lowered his glass slowly. I stood. There was no microphone, no spotlight. Just me in a navy cardigan and sensible shoes, walking past linen and crystal like I had every right to. Because I did. I won't keep you, I said gently. I just wanted to thank you all for supporting this restaurant. It's been part of my life for 30 years. Murmurs rippled across the table. Some of you may not know the history here, but I helped build this place with my husband. From the first cracked tiles on Burnside to this location and everyone that followed. I kept my hands folded. I didn't name Serena. I didn't mention Jeremy. I didn't need to. I've seen this restaurant survive floods, walkouts, recessions. What kept it alive was always the people who came through these doors, guests, staff, and those who quietly did the work. Serena was frozen in place. Her smile had vanished. Legacy, I continued, isn't claimed with a title. It's earned. I'm grateful to still be here. I gave a small nod, then stepped back. The manager waited by the booth and I returned to my seat without another word. The silence hung for a moment too long until one of the guests tried to resume small talk. It didn't land. Serena stared at her plate. Jeremy tapped his spoon against a glass, then stopped himself. The table never fully recovered, but I didn't stay to watch it unravel. I'd already signed the final transfer before I came. The next step wouldn't need an audience. By morning, the calls had already started. The first came from the downtown location, then the branch on Division. Serena had tried to make another reservation, same tone, same entitlement, but her name was flagged across every system. The note attached to her account was short corporate authorization required. I didn't have to write it myself. The manager understood the message. By noon, Jeremy's number appeared on my phone. I let it ring. Then again, then once more. Finally, a voicemail. Mom, what did you do? Serena can't make a booking anywhere. This is childish. Just call me back. I didn't. The second message came 2 hours later, his voice thinner, quieter. Please, we just need to talk. Don't do this with Eli around. That made me pause, but not long enough to answer. When the phone rang again, it wasn't him. Grandma. The small voice came through, shy and careful. Can we still go feed the ducks next week? My chest loosened in a way it hadn't for days. Of course, sweetheart, I said. You pick the day. He started telling me about his new sneakers, about how he could run faster than the ducks now. I let him talk, the sound of his excitement, washing away every sharp word his mother had ever thrown my way. After we hung up, I opened the folder. Angela had couriered over that morning. The trust papers were still crisp, the ink barely dry. I filled in the final page, the one marked Educational Guardian. Eli's name. Independent oversight. No parental access until he reached 25. It wasn't revenge. It was insurance for his future, not mine. I sealed the envelope, wrote the date across the flap, and placed it on the table beside my tea. Outside, the city hummed with its usual indifference. Inside, I felt something close to quiet. Angela would file the documents tomorrow. After that, the rest of my plans would unfold on their own. The envelope was plain. No return address, just my name written in Jeremy's familiar slanted handwriting. I opened it slowly, unsure what version of my son I would find inside. It wasn't angry. That was the first surprise. No accusations, no blame. Just 3 paragraphs of confusion. He said he'd heard bits and pieces, something about share transfers, something about Serena's brunch account being locked. But mostly, he wanted to know one thing. Why didn't you ever tell me? I sat with that question for a long time. The weight of it wasn't in the words, it was in how late they came. I thought about the years I spent slipping between silence and small talk, about holidays where Serena answered before he could speak, about how Jeremy had slowly stopped asking questions and started nodding through everything. When I finally responded, I kept it short. Because you stopped listening when she started speaking for you. No anger, no pleading, just the truth. I included a photocopy of the trust summary. I didn't redact anything. I wanted him to know exactly what had changed and exactly where it left him. Not cut out, but not protected either. He and Serena would keep the apartment on Harper. Nothing more. Then I added something else. A small, tarnished key. The one to the house I'd lived in before the apartment. The one he hadn't visited in years. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't even a test. It was just a signal. The door was closed, but not locked. I sealed the envelope, addressed it in my own hand, and walked it to the mailbox on the corner. I didn't watch it drop. I didn't wait for a reply. Some things had already moved too far to be undone, but not everything. The next day I pulled out my planner and circled Sunday. The ducks would be waiting, and Eli deserved a day that belonged to him. I arrived just after the lunch rush, when the clatter in the kitchen softened, and the dining room found its quiet rhythm again. The corner table was empty, waiting. I didn't have to ask. No manager appeared. No glances from the staff checking to see if I needed special attention. They knew now just enough to treat me normally, which is exactly what I wanted. I set down my bag, opened my paperback, and let the steam from the tea warm my hands. The light from the window shifted across the tablecloth, and I let the silence settle in. A young woman approached, maybe 20, her apron still creased from a recent fold. She smiled nervously. "You come here a lot," she said, balancing a tray of glasses. "You must really love this place." I looked up at her and smiled. "It's built from people like me." She tilted her head, maybe not sure what I meant, maybe too polite to ask. I let her walk away and returned to my book. Across the room, another table buzzed with conversation. Businessmen, I guessed. None of them knew my name, and that was fine. Not everyone needs to know where the foundation lies, only that the building stands. I finished my tea, slowly marked my page with a pressed slip of stationery, and folded a generous tip beneath the saucer. No one stopped me at the door. No one tried to take credit for my presence or my quiet. I stepped outside and tucked my scarf tighter against the breeze. The street moved around me fast and indifferent, as it always had. I didn't mind. The corner belonged to me, not because I claimed it, but because I no longer needed to. I walked 2 blocks before I pulled out my phone and dialed Eli's school. It was Friday. He had half days now. Maybe if he was free, we could pick up bread for the ducks and make it to the park before the wind got too sharp.